The roadmap really began back in the day. And this is my thesis, and I know it's gonna inflame a lot of people, I think, especially those who are quite stagnant or conservative in terms of what automation actually means in product design. But if we talk about producing the product results and achieving outcomes through product outputs, which is a lot of it is UI, a lot of that began in the early web. It's not saying it's a bad thing or we effed up back in the day. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. This is the reality where we're at. Therefore, preferable future is at the footstool of that. We kind of need to, kick off from there and do better. It started with very clear human-computer interaction principles, the early machines, the mice, the keyboard, the screen, how people interact with it, with their limbs and so forth. And the psychology of the interpretation permeated into UX disciplines. Back then, I guess one of the milestones has been the UI guidelines and obsession with it, that every design we made had to be documented and at a rudimentary form. So if I take this unstructured data, I think, let me just draw it out. Kind of we're here by 2023. So it kind of would look like this ultimately on a timeline, if we would just want to represent it in that progression. But UI guidelines was massive milestone because it allowed to create data points so that we can start making smarter decisions of which anyone could get information from. So if you say that your hex value for this pants cap is, I don't know what it could be, maybe you can tell me, but it's like dark gray. That created a central point of decisions which developers could pick up, which brand or content people could pick up, which you as a designer could pick up and work together on. It's one decision making point, of course, unstructured. So they're quite stupid at that point. Then things like atomic design came. And of course, a lot of other things in between doesn't matter. Let me highlight the things which I think you need to know about. Atomic design principles by Brad Frost, let's say, and many other people kind of coined how we scale the components and the logic behind, let's say, the smallest of the components and tokens and variables and atoms into molecules, organisms, you name it, into products, right? Like, how does it scale? So we created a very simplistic mental model, which if you would digitize, you could create design system AI ultimately, but just nobody does yet. The logic is there already. You just need to do it. It's hard work, but anyone can do it. Then things like Google Material Design came, which is digital version of the atomic design and other principles, and a lot of other design systems out there. The Figma libraries further escalated that digitization and automation of the things. Instead of being unstructured and dumb, began to be data presented in a database. And you can already structure a lot of those values, and they are existing in the cloud, basically. That's what you can access in the Figma Lab. Then there's countless of purpose-built abstracted tools which separate designers and the code and the product making and kind of isolate it for the wrong reason, which I'm going to cover in a second. But XD, Photoshop, Fireworks, a lot of other tools for web design and development, the early Microsoft tools, Macromedia tools, a lot of decommission tools and things which we still have, like Principle for micro interactions now. So a lot of those things then kind of fed into the isolated experiment epoch, which we are still at, where you have these delightful pixel pushing, efficiently broken design processes and unstructured data mess. It's basically where we go on these walled gardens of product design and UI design. We take it away and we design, albeit we say we're open on cloud and every product manager and engineer can adopt Figma and observe things. Rarely they're the ones who are also designing or kind of designing and publishing it to the user. They still need to, take their shovels and lift heavy crap, basically, and shovel it into their environments and develop the tools and then publish it. So there is still a lot of kind of walls and silos. Doesn't matter if we are so excited about our own pixel pushing environments and how flashy the Figma got and condition statements and variables and so forth. They're amazing tools, but they're still isolated. And that's why we have so much mess. And to be honest, obsession with the tools and kind of that sparkling and glance instead of reflecting off the principle level philosophy of how it should be in the end, the preferable future again, is what keeps us back ultimately. If you really want to automate the tools, or maybe if you even fear AI, shout about Figma and Figma AI plugins more, please, because it's gonna keep us in this regard and we're never gonna progress, and probably gonna, our preferable futures, again, following future perspective, are gonna kind of satellite into different directions, but not really into the one where the future, the fully automated future, is the right one. Caveat ultimately. But anyhow, reflecting on that, you're going to see that again, we're still here between data presentation. Decision support is minimal. There is no AI assistive decision support just yet. Even if the plugins are there, it's not that. If we would to want to go beyond data presentation alone and go into decision support and automate UX there, we need to think about allowing anyone to be a designer. And I know this is a dangerous statement, but bear with me because it's inevitable. Everybody has to become a designer if we are going to automate things, and we are. Just need to do it right. The actual basically next stage would take us, let me see, where would it take us really? To high automation, and then next one is probably going to be full automation. Or maybe no, probably going to be something along the lines of that. Something like that basically. And full automation, no idea, but we can at least anticipate and roadmap what's to come in the high automation as a stage. And so anyone's a designer epoch is really what would happen if we would go beyond the just representation of data and content and start really automating how we design and emulating what designers do, so we can automate those smaller decisions or tasks. Some of it is happening, of course, but in just isolated areas. The first stage, just like I noted those milestones, the first milestone would be that the product and UI design models need to be captured. You cannot have AI generative models applied again rightfully. If you want to do true UX AI, you can't just slap UI stuff on AI ideas and call it a day. You need to capture the human mental models and how do they design today and what decisions they make and in one's strengths, what qualities, again, fuzzy cognitive mapping. Then you need to do actual model shaping. So like LLM-like models applied to those public design systems. There are so many public, like Google Material Design and every other which is being published, the design principle elements. If you can basically digitize all of that and plug it in the right generative models, all the data, again, to learn from, you can then combine it with the mental models of the designers and create a very abstracted toolkit where anyone could come to the tool and say, create me a banking app. And then it would do at a relatively high precision and quality, let's say. It would spit out you the Figma mockups, and absolutely anyone could do that. Product manager, engineer, CEO, it doesn't have to be just you. Now, you could argue that a lot of tools are already trying to do that. Of course they can, but they're doing crap job. They're nowhere near. It's very rudimentary, very simple. They're still giving you a simple set of mockups of sort of good enough, but they're not like, you know, where you would call it a decision support or conditional automation realm. No freaking way. To get to the anyone's product designer, you again need to do these freaking milestones, which all entail their own bloody evolution, basically. There's just so much actions to be done and so much to explore, but this is basically roadmaps it into the conditional automation, and the high automation then would kind of bridge the gap between the product design and the product maker epoch. And this is super important because right now, again, we're divorced from the engineering. In the future, engineering and design are going to become one. If the actual evolution is going to go as I preferably predict here, the designer and code, their mental models are going to be captured and going to be merged. So both the design and how you code it at the same time are going to be informing those code and UI design at the same abstraction layer. Meaning you're not going to have separate tools, different environments, separate language. It's going to be one language, which is going to be maker language, let's say. So UI and development roles are not going to be a thing anymore. Anyone's gonna become a product maker. You, your friend, whoever it is, a product manager, CEO, are gonna go on the same app, and you're gonna see that the interface, again, could happen in VR or whatever, but it's gonna be the same thing. You might describe it in a voice, in a type, in a text, click a button. They're gonna be probably similar, but the underlying AI is gonna be different. And this is what really a lot of designers right now miss, because they believe that at each of these stages, the actual product could look very different. And of course it could, but the more you work with the actual machine learning, computational engineers, AI, data analysts, you understand but that it doesn't have to. The systems just become smarter as long as you have the foundations, again, from human-centered design perspective. So the tool in decision support could look very similar to high automation, maybe just be a bit simplified, but still the describe an app and give me the results could be the same, or maybe the results are just gonna go and launch to the user immediately here, depending on the scenario and complexity and, you name it. Now, if everybody's gonna become a product maker, meaning designer and producer and a coder, without using those tasks, they're just gonna be able to come in and have an intent that they need an app, and here's an app. AI just made it for you immediately, just with a click of a button. New product maker mental models then gonna inform the new generative models to then become even smarter. And then the high automation product making tools are gonna be a reality again. So there's almost like a cycle. I don't know if you noticed, but here the mental models inform the generative models, and then you have further abstracted toolkit. Emulated what people actually do, then you codify it, for a lack of a better term, and then you basically abstract the tools, and it kind of rotates and goes in those cycles, and it further enhances and kind of evolves AI UX ultimately, where you go from very manual to super automated. That should make sense. And to be honest, I feel like if I were to slap some years here, 2023, and it was a designer epoch 5 to 10 years, it's because a lot of those things might seem like they are decision support tools or these conditional automation tools, but they're very simplistic. They're not fully automated just yet. And if you are a product designer, I'm talking super holistically, that end-to-end product design, this is who you are and this is all you do, minus the leadership and research skills. There is so much of those specific tools and tasks which need their own counterparts and replacements. And therefore, that's why I believe that it's gonna take quite some time, let's say 30. Again, I'm gonna be very wrong because the future, again, is not predictable. But just as I said before, future can be influenced by individual choices. So if we set the direction right as product designers right now, we can basically automate it right because it's gonna inform every new decision we make. And if you're gonna join a startup who wants to automate design systems or wants to automate user testing, something like very evaluative research, let's say, which should be probably the easiest way maybe to automate, presumably, you are then can take this as a mental model and maybe make a future a bit better for us or for anyone else to come. This is the roadmap version 1. We're probably gonna return and gonna make the roadmap version 2. Now, before I leave, I want to address one of the Q&A and one of the questions from a friend, again, a channel member, a supporter.